16, because in Vedic marriages took place earlier than the West. So he was 24, she was 16, and they were married. And he decided, for various reasons, that he was going to take sannyas. So when he made that decision, of course, it was a transcendental decision, and he then consulted Nityananda, his dear friend Nityananda. And Nityananda said, no, you can't do this. And, and why, and, back and forth. And, people, they're so attached to you, and you take sannyas, they may never see you again. And how can you, he gave different explanations and very warm, loving, personal reasons. One after the next, the tennis match, Lord Chaitanya won, Nimai Pandit. So then Nityananda embraced his shoulders and they started crying together, and it was quite a scene. And then finally it was decided that he, Nimai Pandit, was going to inform, just according to the biographies of his life, just a handful, that's like 5 people, in addition to one who was already informed. And one of those persons who he was going to inform was, look at that. Well done. Was Gauridas Pandit, which means Gauridas was a very intimate associate, very dear, eternal associate, as it says here. He's Subal and Krishna Lila. So that's Gauridas Pandit. And so Nimai Pandit and Nityananda, the 2 of them went to visit Gauridas Pandit and give him the good news. Now, Gauridas Pandit he was older than Nimai Pandit, and he had a particular relationship, was kind of a feisty relationship, and he commanded him, you can't do this, and gave his reasons why you can't do this. And after he, expressed himself strongly, Nimai Pandit said, I understand that you're too much attached to me. Therefore, what I will do is make an arrangement so that after I have accepted sannyas, you'll be able to see me always. And that was, Nimai Pandit, personally made an arrangement for the first Gaurnatai deities in Bengal. So that these deities are pictured here. They're very tall, almost 6 feet tall, very slender. The hands are in the benediction giving mudra. And when he provided the deities, it took some time to have the deities carved. He was ready to leave. So at the place where Gauridas Pandit resided, let's do this. It's time for everybody to move forward. Everybody that's in the room, be kind. Move forward. Don't sit there. Move forward. Because sometimes it happens that people come a little bit later and they need a place to sit. That's why. Thank you. Why do you want to be around the corner? There you go. Thank you very much. I know it's not your favorite spot, but first Gornitai deities. They're on the screen. So when the deities were provided to Goridas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Nimai Pandit said to him, when you're feeling separation from me, you regard these deities, and within the deities you'll see me. I'm with you. I won't depart. My deity form will be here. And so the structure in those parts of the country, there's not just a boundary wall, there's like a tall, like 10-foot tall wall all around. And then there's a gate. That's the only way out of the property. There's a gate. And Nimai and Nityananda started heading for the gate. And when they're heading for the gate, Goridas looked at the deities and looked at them and said, "Stop. If the deity is not different than you, then you stay. Let the deity go." You've heard this description? You've heard this description, I'm sure. Yes? Yes. So Lord Chaitanya or Nimai Pandit smiled and said, okay. So the deities got off the altar, and he and Nityananda stood on the altar, side by side. And the deities started walking out the front gate. And then Goridas saw this going on, and he said, wait a minute, it's okay. They can stay and you can go. And multiple times back and forth until he realized the deity and Nimai Pandit are non-different. So with that permission, because Nimai Pandit liked the blessing of his own devotees, they departed. So now here's Goridas with the first Gaur Nitai deities in the world. And he worshipped them with great, great devotion. In time, Goridas became a guru, and that one disciple that he had, the first disciple that he had, he named Chaitanya Das. Nice name, Chaitanya Das. So Chaitanya Das, very devoted to his guru, at the same time very deeply attached to Gaur Nitai, he decided on the very first Gaur Purnima festival to conduct a festival in honor of Lord Chaitanya's appearance day for Gaur Purnima. Now, he started making plans while Gauridas was out of town, and arrangements were made for the venue. The venue was, perhaps you'll visit someday, out the front gate, make a left-hand turn, down a few hundred meters, and then there's a big, looks like a child's playground, like a big public square. And they set up an altar, a place where the deities could go and honor Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda on Gaur Purnima, and a big festival, and kirtan performers and cooks and this and that. And Gauridas came back to town and asked him, "What are you doing? You made all these arrangements without consulting me." And he was, but it was too late because everyone had been invited, etc., etc., etc. So when the Gaur Purnima day came, big kirtan in the courtyard, in the festival pandal area. The deities on the altar could hear the kirtan because it was not so far away, and they got off the altar and started running towards where the kirtan was. And Gauridas grabbed a stick and started chasing the deities with the stick in his hand, saying, "Get back here, it's time for your arti." And they were looking over their shoulders and running, and they saw Chaitanya Das, and they both disappeared into the heart of Chaitanya Das. Poor Gauridas, he was now understanding how exalted was his Chaitanya Das disciple. So from that point on in time, Chaitanya Das became Hriday Chaitanya. So Chaitanya Das became Hriday Chaitanya, who is a disciple of Gauridas Pandit, and another name is Hridayananda. So like Prabhupada named one disciple Hridayananda Das. That's where the name comes from. So celebrated Hriday Chaitanya, in course of time, he grew and matured and became a spiritual leader himself. It was this Hriday Chaitanya that Dukhi desired to take Diksha from him. And the Diksha image painting is here. This is Hriday Chaitanya giving Diksha to his disciple Dukhi, and from that point on, his name became Dukhi Krishnadas. So I hope you got the name straight, because Dukhi Krishnadas becomes Syamananda. Dukhi Krishnadas becomes Syamananda, but he's Dukhi Krishnadas from the time of his mantra Diksha. And in time, as Dukhi Krishnadas became matured and, wise and learned, his spiritual master, Hriday Chaitanya, could understand this young man is exceptional, and I'd like him to be trained by the best. And the best is in Vrindavan. And the best of the best in Vrindavan is Jiva Goswami. So he sent his disciple, Dukhi Krishnadas, to go to Vrindavan and take shelter and become a student of Jiva Goswami, like the best of the best. It's like, Harvard University or something. So the best of the best. So there's a nice description in Bhakti Ratnakar of his journey all the way from Ambika Kalna, heading in a westerly direction, heading for Vrindavan. And the first place he stopped, according to this history of his travel, he stopped in Navadvip. And when he was in Navadvip, the father of Lord Chaitanya was gone, but he visited the house of Jagannath Mishra, the place where Nimai Pandit grew up when he was a young boy, and still alive was old Ishan. And they had Ishan, the personal servant of Sachi Devi. They had this nice exchange. Very, very, very old sadhu, Ishan. And Sachi Devi, as a lady, she showered her great affection on Dukhi Krishnadas. So now he's continuing further in a westerly direction. He went to the place where Nimai Pandit received Diksha from Ishwar Puri, because the circumstance of his Diksha was that Nimai, as was the proper conduct for a young Brahmin boy, he went to Gaya to observe the Shraddha ceremony for his father. It's up on a hill, and at the top of the hill, there's in the ground, there's footprints of Lord Vishnu. So he, Dukhi Krishnadas, saw the footprints and remembered this pastime of Nimai Pandit receiving Diksha from Ishwara Puri. And then he continued going further west, and he came to Benares. And there, still alive, was Tapan Mishra, Chandrasekhar, and many other Gora Bhaktas. And he met those Gora Bhaktas and became very enlivened, and in hearing the pastimes and exchanges with Nimai Pandit when he came through, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he came through again later. And then he made his way to Mathura. There's a nice place in Mathura called Vishram Ghat. Vishram it's a ghat by the side of the river Jamuna, where Krishna rested after he killed Kamsa. There's a nice temple at Vishram Ghat. And also with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he visited Mathura, he took bath there. And so did Dukhi Krishnadas. Near that place is a celebrated deity, Adikeshava deity. I didn't present a picture here, but it's a very beautiful deity. And he became very emotional, transcendentally emotional, just being at that place with all those auspicious activities that had taken place. And finally, he reached Vrindavan from Mathura. And he met Jiva Goswami. That was his assignment from his spiritual master, Hridaya Chaitanya. And when he met Jiva Goswami, not acting properly, at the top it says, there was a letter that was being carried by Dukhi Krishnadas requesting Jiva Goswami to consider his disciple, Dukhi Krishnadas, to be an extension, that he was to be like an extension of Hridaya Chaitanya. So just accept him like your own. In course of time, there were two other students that were already with Jiva Goswami, Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasacharya. So this biography from the lives of these great personalities describes that Jiva Goswami gave titles to each of the three. Now, Dukhi Krishna Das was given a nickname or a title of Syamananda. And the reason is that when Dukhi Krishna Das was residing in Vrindavan, not far from the Radha Damodar temple, is the temple of Radha Shyamasundara. And he liked Radha Shyamasundara very much, very devoted to them. Because of his devotion to Radha Shyamasundara, Jiva Goswami gave him this title, Syamananda. And to Narottam, he gave the title Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur. The Thakur title is a title of respect. I mean, just because this came up at 4:30 this morning with the Chinese devotees, like what are these other titles? So Thakur means showing deep respect towards a highly elevated, revered spiritual master or a spiritual leader. Thakur. So Narottam Das Thakur, the title. And to Srinivas, the title that was given was Acharya. Acharya means, one who teaches by example, or a spiritual teacher or preceptor who embodies the knowledge they impart, and they establish standards of conduct for one who has that knowledge. That's an Acharya. So Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Syamananda. These three became very intense students of Jiva Goswami. Here's a very old painting depicting Jiva Goswami receiving very nicely Dukhi Krishnadas when he arrived, or then Syamananda. And on the left, there's his two other students, Narottam and Srinivasacharya. And here's the same, depicting taking shelter of Jiva. And others are happy to receive this very nice student. And so the three of them became regular students every day, so many hours every day, hearing at the feet of Jiva Goswami. Imagine what that was like. They're all three of them superlatively qualified receivers. Jiva Goswami, the best of all transmitters. And so Jiva Goswami, was preparing them to be next in line in disciplic succession, which is a very important service because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa and Sanatan, Jiva Goswami, and who's next? So he knew that has to happen, and so he prepared them and trained them thoroughly. And the teachings of his teachings, that Jiva Goswami was such a personality. I mean, we could spend some time on Jiva Goswami, but I won't go to there too much because of time. He not only wrote 400,000 verses in Sanskrit, he was the most prolific of all the Goswamis, but he kept the manuscripts in very careful order, because he, unlike the other Goswamis, had a temple. The temple was arranged by Jiva Goswami. The Radha Damodar deity that he worshipped was arranged by Jiva Goswami. And so Jiva Goswami became the librarian for all the writings of all the Goswamis. Thank God. Because those books, the original manuscripts of the Goswamis, are still available. Say it differently. The original manuscript of Mahabharata, where is it? There's no such thing. There's iterations over generations in different languages, but the original manuscript, there's no such thing. And that was a frustration for Madhvacharya, who also liked to have a big Swamis. Very important, because they're available. And, copies of, but the original manuscript and copies of so we know what the six Goswamis wrote. Much later, maybe 20, 30 years ago, that entire library was given to the Jiva Institute to preserve by modern technology. So at least copies of the original manuscript are still available. It's a very important service. The writings of the Goswamis and the preserving of those writings, very important service. So Jiva Goswami was, a visionary and an author, and he trained the next generation, those three. Here's some nice photographs of the deity of Shyamasundara that he worshipped. And notice, the sandalwood paste markings on the palms of his hands and the back of his hands and his cheeks, especially this big arch up above his eyes. In different days, sometimes it's white, sometimes it's sandalwood colored, but it's the mark of the deity. Here's a photograph of the deity of Radha, Shyamasundara. Another day, photograph of Radha, Shyamasundara. She's very nicely decorated, and there are different styles for deity worship. Here's a very close, very rare photograph of the deity of Shyamasundara. Again, the markings on his hands and his cheeks and above his eyes and his chin. Standard markings. Radha Shyamasundara. There's his, on festival days, you all know what the holy day is, so they're holding syringes and squirt guns and, having a big festival and colored dyes. And so that holy festival in Vrindavan is one of the days of their deity worship. So the teaching of Jiva Goswami to these three went on for some time. And after some time, the writings, the teachings and the writings embodying those teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were held in Vrindavan, the seat of high learning for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers. One of the circumstances that came up, a very important one in Dukhi Krishna's life, or now Syamananda's life, was he liked doing service. So the area where the Radha Damodar temple was known as a place. The large area is now reduced significantly, called Sevakunj. So it's an area in Vrindavan where Radha and Krishna and the gopis would engage in rasa dance. Sevakunj. It is said, if you visit Vrindavan, or when you visit Vrindavan, when you want to go to see Sevakunj, you can't. It's with an iron fence around it, and you can't get in after dark, because it is said people that go in there after dark, they go mad. So they lock the gate. You can't go in. So the whole area was the Sevakunj area where the Radha Damodar temple is. And now it's not with all these gnarled-looking trees. So Dukhi Krishna Das or Syamananda liked service. So one of the things that Jiva Goswami gave him was, in the area where rasa dance is performed, you take a broom and you go make it nice and clean for Radha and Krishna. So that's what he did. Every day, every day. And one of those every days, he found an ankle ornament. Here's a nice illustration showing. Now there it depicts a throne. There wasn't a throne, but he saw this ankle ornament. And when he leaned over to pick up the ankle ornament, he felt a kind of spiritual ecstasy just touching the ankle ornament. So he immediately understood this isn't something, besides it was effulgent, it's not ordinary. And the person who this ankle ornament belongs to is not also ordinary. So there he is, finding the ankle ornament, and he decided, I'm going to put it in bury it and keep it in a safe place so that I can try to return the ornament to the owner. Guess who the ankle ornament belonged to? Radharani, right? But he didn't know that. He just wanted verification. So what happened, there's an image depicting the ankle ornament. He continued his activity of sweeping. That's in the lower, the upper left, as he's finding the ankle ornament in the lower left. One day, a very old Vrijbasi lady hobbled up and asked him in a creaky voice, "Did you find an ankle ornament here?" And Shamananda said, "Yes, I did." And the old lady said, "May I have it? Because it belongs to a dear friend of mine." And Dukhi Krishna was clever. He said, "I want to meet that person. I don't want just to give the ankle ornament to you. It's too valuable. I want to meet that person. Can you take me to that person who this ankle ornament belongs to?" And the old lady smiled, and you see in the right, this is Bhakti Ratnakar, this narration that I'm giving. He or she suddenly turned into a young gopi, and she identified herself by name and said, I've been sent here by Srimati Radharani to retrieve her ankle ornament. It fell off during rasa dance. And if you like, I can bring you to her. So he goes, yes, bring me to her. So that's what happened. So in his spiritual form, which was a young gopi, spiritual form, she, Dukhi Krishna Das or Syamananda, in a young gopi form, was taken to a throne. You saw that little image of a throne where Radharani was seated, and the Ashtasakis are on her all sides, and the young gopi was brought before her, and she then turned over the ankle ornament that belonged to Radharani. Radharani was very thankful and very courteous and very this and that, and so Radharani took the ankle ornament and placed the ankle ornament on the forehead of this young gopi, making an indelible mark of a new kind of tilak, a Vaishnava tilak on her forehead. And when the time came for Syamananda or Dukhi Krishna Das to return back to the mortal realm, she had this mark, or he had this mark on his forehead with a different kind of tilak. And that became a source of irritation back to Hriday Chaitanya. Some followers of Hriday Chaitanya from Bengal, from time to time, they would go to Vrindavan, and they met with Dukhi Krishna Das, now going by a different name with different tilak. And they didn't say anything to him, but they took this message back to Hriday Chaitanya, and said, blah, blah, blah. It looks like Jiva Goswami has changed his name and has given him a different tilak, and maybe he's given him a different mantra. No, and this is a spiritual transgression. So when Hridaya Chaitanya heard this, having been fully trusting Jiva Goswami to entrust his disciple for training in Krishna consciousness, he decided to make a pilgrimage to Vrindavan himself. And when he came, one of the places he went straight away was to visit Jiva Goswami, and he confronted Jiva Goswami. Oh, two great personalities. What have you done? I entrusted Dukhi Krishnadas to you, and now he has different tilak and in a different name, and I don't know what else has happened. So could you please explain? And Jiva Goswami's explanation was very honest and very straightforward. He said, I don't know. Because, oh, yes, Radharani said, whatever you do, don't tell anybody. There's two different stories. One is he told Jiva Goswami, the other is he didn't tell Jiva Goswami. So Jiva Goswami said, I don't know what happened. You're going to have to ask your disciple what happened. So this is the painting. Hridaya Chaitanya is seated with Krishna Das or Syamananda seated before him in saffron, and behind him are thousands of other followers of Hridaya Chaitanya, and the same confrontation. What is this tilak, and what is this new name? What has happened? Please explain. And Syamananda was stuck. So Syamananda said, according to this biography, he said, I want some time to give you a proper answer. I'd like to think how to give you the proper answer. So Hridaya Chaitanya said, fine, take as much time as you like, but I want a proper answer. So while sitting there, Syamananda entered a state of deep meditation or trance. And in his trance, he again found himself before Srimati Radharani. The painting is depicting there's two young gopis consoling, because now this young gopi who received the tilak marking from Radharani herself, a different tilak marking than the Gaudiyas are accustomed to wear, she's crying and crying, and they're trying to console her. And so what to do? And Radharani said to the young gopi, don't worry, everything's going to be all right. When you go back and have your conversation with Hridaya Chaitanya, you just tell him that this happened in a dream, the change of tilak. And if he questions, how do I know if it happened in a dream? You're just making a story. Ask him to wash off the tilak, and it won't wash off. And not only that, I want to give you a deity. So there's Lalita in the peacock-looking sari, peacock feather-looking sari, handed this young gopi a deity. And the deity was given a name. Lala Lali was the name of the deity. And so everything's going to be all right. Reassurance. The young gopi stopped crying. She came back, and with the mercy of Srimati Radharani, very confident everything's going to be all right. And so he now, it's Syamananda, informed this all happened in a dream. And if you have a question about is it true or not, am I just making up a story, you see if the tilak will wash off, it won't wash off. The tilak wouldn't wash off. And so Hridaya Chaitanya, was satisfied that it wasn't Jiva Goswami made a transgression or his disciple made a transgression, It's part of a dream. So here's a nice photograph of the deity. Where he felt they were sufficiently prepared to carry forward the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. A request came from the eastern part of India. So you all know the geography. Vrindavan is north central India, and Bengal is far east India. And Lord Chaitanya was very much celebrated in the eastern part of the country, in Bengal, in Orissa, very much celebrated. But the continuation of the teachings had gotten distorted. And so Janava found that very disturbing. She sent a messenger to Jiva Goswami. You kept the library of the Goswamis very carefully. Could you send copies of the original manuscripts of the Goswamis, and then those teachings can be presented over here on this side of India? And if you could send your students, even better. So there's a photograph of a bullock cart, a painting of a bullock cart, an illustration, loaded up with the writings of the Goswamis, and at Janava's request. And on the way in transit to go from Vrindavan to the eastern part of India, there was a problem. There's always a problem, right? You're good people. There's always a problem. The problem was there was a king, a Muslim king, along the way, who his name was Veer Hambir, and he had an astrologer assistant. The astrologer assistant informed him one day that entering your kingdom from the west is a cartload of valuables, extremely valuable material. So you're a good, smart king. You figure out a way to get those valuables and enrich your kingdom, right? So the king did like that. So he went. He found where the three with their bullock cart and they're camping, heading in the easterly direction. And in the middle of the night, they ambushed the cart and took the cart. So when the three woke up in the morning, the cart was gone. And what to do, what happened? A decision was made that Srinivas would stay behind and find the books. And he found the books. They were in the care of King Virhambir. And by his presence, Srinivas made a big impression on the heart and the mind of Virhambir, because when he got the cart and found it was just books inside, what happened with my astrologer? He said something so valuable. And then here comes Srinivas, and he could understand immediately just by there's a series of events that took place. Virhambir became a student of Srinivas. He became a disciple of Srinivas and became a great Vaishnava in course of time. And then the books went the rest of the way as they were supposed to initially. Meanwhile, the other two continued, and all three developed very specific kirtan styles, which so along with the books and the teachings, which they had richly assimilated from teachings of Jiva Goswami, they were also as is common, and amongst Vaishnavas, particularly Gaudiya Vaishnavas, particularly Bengali Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they love kirtan. So different songs in their local languages, certainly Bengali and other languages. So they propagated Lord Chaitanya's teachings by giving teachings, and copies of the books were made by qualified brahmanas and scribes to make the books available to others, and their teachings and their kirtan. Now, one of those three, because our focus is on Syamananda, he had this encounter in the course of his propagating Lord Chaitanya's teachings. He had a little conflict with Sher Khan. He wasn't like he was a military guy. The rule was by military force. People stepped out of line. They met with soldiers, and so Sher Khan, he particularly despised kirtan. It was notorious. So one time, in the town or the habitation place of Sher Khan, Syamananda took a kirtan party with their musical instruments and up and down the public streets, like we do in the Hare Krishna movement. And Sher Khan didn't like it at all. So he sent some soldiers, and he himself personally came to smash the musical instruments and stop the kirtan. And Syamananda happened to be in the kirtan party. And when he saw what they were attempting to do, he raised his voice in such a pitch and intensity that the beards and the mustaches of the Muslim soldiers burst into flames. Their nose burned and started to bleed. And they freaked out, as they say, and ran. And that night, Sher Khan had a dream. And in his dream, there was a personality that came before him and scolded him severely. I am Allah. I am your master. And you have offended one of my dear devotees. And then he transformed from Allah to a golden Chaitanya Mahaprabhu form and said, you have offended my dear devotee, and you have interrupted my Sankirtan. You go find this very same Syamananda, fall at his feet, beg forgiveness, and take initiation from him. Otherwise, your life will be a life in hell for many, many, many generations. With a beard that was no longer a beard anymore, and bloody face. Sher Khan went to find Syamananda the next morning and fell at his feet. They had more kirtan the next morning in defiance of what had just happened the day before. And he apologized profusely, and he eventually became initiated devotee named Chaitanya Das. So very much like what happened with Veer Hambir, he also became a great devotee. These times were wild. It's Muslim rule, and it's not just like British rule, it's Muslim rule. It was very intense. And wild rulers with no boundaries to what they could do and did do. So Sher Khan was one, and that's the opposition they met. But by transcendental arrangements, different things happened instead. Further along in his journey of going across eastern Bengal, or excuse me, eastern parts of India, Syamananda met a yogi. The painting is meant to show someone riding on a lion, because sometimes yogis walk, sometimes yogis ride a horse. This yogi rode a lion, and he would travel here and there and do his yogi thing right on the back of his lion. So he, Damodar, met with Syamananda, and they had several days debate. And at the end of several days, Syamananda sufficiently filled Damodar with bhakti and revealed his spiritual nature. And this Damodar then became a great follower of Lord Chaitanya, despite, his previous position of being a revered yogi. So a whole range of different people were being met. This is just a little sampling in one sense. Here's a painting of Rasikananda. You see his complexion is darkish complexion, like Krishna's complexion. And he became, in course of time, the most important disciple of Syamananda. And he was known either as Rasika Murari or Rasikananda. He was the son of a zamindar. The zamindar means landholder under a king. So he had a very important role, his father. And Rasikananda was, expected by his father to help him, to continue in the line, because it's a privilege. And he didn't have interest. He had interest in what Syamananda had to say and who Syamananda was. And he became his disciple. And he became a very important assistant in the rest of their lives together, Syamananda and Rasikananda. We're going to hear some more about him a little bit later. In the same town, in Rohini, there was another yogi who had the same name, Damodar, and there was no debate for several days. The yogi, when seeing, just from a distance, seeing Syamananda, he saw his effulgence. He went running to him. He fell at his feet, and Syamananda immediately understood that the transcendental event that was taking place, and he commanded him to chant Gornitai, and in quick order, this yogi became an ecstatic devotee in a state of trance together with Syamananda. The power, the potency of these personalities was astounding. Here's another last of these little stories. In one of the places, do you know this place in Singapore? Have you been there? How close to you is that place? Have you been there many times? Yeah? Okay, here's the story that he'll probably tell it differently than me, but this is the story that I know. There was a zamindar in this place of Nara Singhpur, and his name was Udanda Rai. Udanda Rai was mean and nasty. He disliked Vaishnavas, so much so that he killed thousands of them. He gathered their asanas, a cloth or something that they would sit on when they were doing their devotions, and gathered the asanas and threw their bodies in a well. He was wicked and cruel and very severe person. So Rasikananda, together with Syamananda, thought, wow, if this person is like, Jaghai and Madhai, if these persons can become Vaishnava, if this Zamindar can become a Vaishnava, it would be really wonderful. So they decided one evening to personally go visit his home, this cruel fellow that killed thousands of Vaishnavas. When they came to his home, he was lying down. He wasn't asleep, but half asleep. And he saw a figure in the room. And the figure in the room said something similar, I am the personality of Godhead. And very soon, Syamananda is going to visit your home, and you should take shelter of him and receive initiation from him and stop your wickedness. And that it was Lord Chaitanya's golden form glowing and then disappeared in the middle of his room, in its darkened room at night. And then next comes Syamananda and Rasikananda walking into his home. And, he was so startled by this experience that he stood and understood this was a teaching, a warning to him. And so he fell at Syamananda's feet. He who was a killer of Vaishnavas, by their spiritual presence, became so influenced that he accepted them. And later he became a great devotee. A complete role reversal. In this town of Singapore, there's a deity of Syamananda Pandit. You see the photograph of the deity. And there's a deity of Rasikananda. My understanding, my memory is, this deity of Rasikananda is in Ramuna, and because Rasikananda spent some part of his life worshipping the deity of Gopinath, Chirakora Gopinath, at this place. So his deity is there. And we're nearly done. This is an altar where Syamananda engaged in some worship together with Rasikananda. And here's a close-up of the deity that they worshipped. So there's a little bit of the life of Syamananda Pandit. Nice to see so many devotees here. Thank you for coming. See if so far there's been very lively discussion after every class, so I purposely this is such a long class. Let's see if there's some discussion. Any topics you'd like to hear further discussion about? Yes, go ahead. Here comes the microphone.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I recently only read a book, The Lives of Vaishnava Saints, Srinivas Acharya Narottam Das Thakur Syamanand Pandit, by Stephen Rosen. So in there, I came to know that these three were the first book distributor of Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Yes.
So I later found a letter that Srila Narottam Das Thakur wrote to Srila Jiva Goswami, in that he mentioned their book scores. So I was just wondering if
I don't know anything about their book scores.
Yeah. So would it be okay if I just read the book scores?
Yeah, sure.
And then you could motivate us for book distribution?
You got the microphone, go ahead.
So this is on the BBT book distribution website. It said, written on palm leaves, a letter from Srila Narottam Das Thakur to Srila Jiva Goswami contains the annual book distribution score for the year ending on Gaura Purnima of Shakala 1501 AD 1579. Srila Srinivas Acharya. Bhagavatam with Vaishnava Toshani 6. Janananda song 23. Govinda Dasa song 19. Narottam Das's Prarthana 11. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1. Chaitanya Bhagavat 22. Lochana Das Chaitanya Mangala 6. Hari Bhakti Vilas 1. Murari Gupta's Karadacha 1. Narottam Das Thakur's Bhagavatam 2. Jananand songs 21. Prarthana 56. Chaitanya Bhagavat 45. Chaitanya Chandramrita 5. Vasu Ghosh Gauranga Padavalis 34. And then Srila Syamananda's score, which is the highest. Bhagavatam 4. Janananda songs 10. Govinda Das songs 11. Other songs 34. Narottam Das Prarthana 16. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 5. Ujjwal Nilamani 1. Chaitanya Bhagavat 25. Chaitanya Chandramrita 15. Vasu Ghosh Gauranga Padavalis 14. Narottam Das Thakur concludes his letter with the following emotional comment. Until we are able to develop another type of technology to print the books, due to the difficulty involved in creating books by hands. So these books were created by hands, which is being neglected. Most of our books distribution program will be postponed. We are sure that one day some magnanimous person will come and will develop the movement of ecstatic love of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, distributing books all over the world. Until then, what will we, persons who are poor, bereft, and abominable, do? What is the benefit of discussing the stories of the Lord's incarnation, worshipping the Lord's deities, giving musical recitation of Lord's pastimes, chanting the Lord's holy name on beats, etc., when we have such small scores? This piece came from Neela Lakshmi Dasi, who has distributed books for 30 years. The last 8 of them is in Sri Sri Krishna Balram Mandir in Vrindavan. She received these scores from Radha Kund Dasi, who is the wife of Yashomati Nandan Prabhu, both disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who daily distributes up to 400 books in the Holy Dham. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Could you please motivate us as well, Maharaj, for book distribution? And
You have done it. It's our line. They're the first ones, and it's in our line. And our successor acharyas did what they did. The printing. I'll just say two things. In the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was a system of printing using offset printing, which, as far as I understand it, it means letters were set on a plate, and then so they're uneven, and then the plate would get some ink and it would press on a paper and make an offset printing copy, and then those copies were put together and stapled together, and that was his way of book distribution. Way back during the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was an original Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts. You all probably know of that book. 86 pages. I somehow got a copy of what at least was said to be a copy of the offset printing with the letters, not properly squared and so forth. But it's the life is summary of Chaitanya Charitamrita and the precepts, which is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's classic Dasamula Tattva, the 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and that was the book, 86 pages, with the foreword indicating that all educated people of the world at least should know who is Lord Chaitanya and what his teachings are. So, book distribution as a format, as primitive as it was at that time, to make the message well known. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, used the printing press. Bhaktisiddhanta not only used the printing press, but he bought a printing press, or had his followers buy and operate a printing press to propagate his teachings, and in different languages, etc., etc., etc. And that's how the Hare Krishna movement started. Kind of seat of the pants, kind of printing Back to Godhead magazine, following our founder Acharya. And the system was a little more sophisticated, but not much. I forget what the system was called. There was a machine that you cranked by hand, and you set the type on that printer, and then crank the thing with your hand, and it mimeograph. There we go, mimeograph. So it made copies, impressed a copy on a piece of paper, just by turning the cylinder around and around. And then those copies, because there was no money in the beginning days, so that's how they presented Back to Godhead magazine. Mimeographed copies, stapled together, and then distribute them. That was it. And of course, it became a little more sophisticated in the course of time. But the principle has its precedent, and we're just following. I'm going to give you a book score. Some of you know, besides the Parama Karuna seated in the room, there's a Parama Karuna disciple of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Same name, very different personality. And he regularly sends me stuff, like, what he does every day. And he does it every day. So here's one. Total books distributed in 6 days. 1,075 books. $6,500 collected in 6 days. He's a go Sankirtan devotee nonstop. So, it's there's precedent. That he's a gifted person, very dedicated and interesting personality. But it's something for each of us. Our capacities are different. It's our line. We like it. Paramakruna, you wanted to say something. Pass the microphone back.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation on Sri Syamananda Pandit. I had not read some of the pastimes, so that was very enlightening for me. Thank you, Maharaj. And yes, I have never met the other Param Karuna Prabhu, but I sometimes get his emails or meant for him. And one time somebody sent me an email, you didn't show up for doing your seva of Mangalarti or something. And since I'm on the West Coast and he's like in Chicago, I sent it to him like later. That was funny. Maharaj, two questions, one a very short one and then a little bit. The first one, Ishan, who was mentioned earlier in the slides as serving Sri Sachi Mata, is he the same Ishan who was accompanying Sri Sanatan Goswami earlier and then? Or
I don't know. I don't think so.
Hmm.
But I'd have to research. I don't know.
Okay. Sure.
What? Yeah. So, but
Oh.
he's asking questions that I don't have the answer to. Do you have the answer? Yeah, I understand. And my answer is I have to research. I don't know. I understand the question. My answer is I don't know.
All right. Second question. So this whole aspect of like bringing to the notice of Sri Hridaya Chaitanya Maharaj about Sri Syamananda Pandit's, apparent transgression by the disciples and connecting that to the discussions we've had on respect and all.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that, like we've heard that if you have a problem with someone or something, you see, one of the options is to report or bring it to the notice of their spiritual master or their authority rather than to gossip about it. So that's one thing that,
There are
and
many options. That's one of them.
sure. And the second one, as I understood it, also like those disciples, disciples thinking like, okay, if there is something against me, I will tolerate, but it's not okay to tolerate something against an offense against the guru that must be, addressed. So they went and probably reported to Hridaya Chaitanya Goswami. I'm just thinking that it's probably so. Any just thoughts from you? The mood again. The yesterday's discussion on the internal mood is what matters.
Yeah.
It's maybe they did the right thing if it was done in the proper mood, and then Hridaya Chaitanya Goswami also did the right thing in going and asking for an honest explanation.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong as
No.
such. They did
No.
his disciples.
No. Correct. I can go through and repeat and check the boxes, but they didn't say anything directly to Syamananda. Hey, what's going on? They didn't do that. To Jiva Goswami, they didn't do that. They reported it to their guru, and they didn't. They could have said, we don't know if we got it right, but this is what we've understood. They didn't. There's no indication of preamble. They were hot-headed Bengalis, and they said whatever they said, however they said it. So he got irritated, and so went straight to the source, Jiva Goswami. This is reported to me. Please offer your explanation. So I'm just checking the same boxes that you were checking. That as far as I can see, there was no transgression of etiquette on the part of anyone involved in all this whole thing.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. That's what I wanted to understand.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Others?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just curious where the anklet was used to mark the tilak on one of the gopis in one of the depictions. Is that the reasoning where the tradition, where the design of the tilak in our tradition comes from, or that's a different?
This is on a deity
Where I think Radha
or an
was
illustration.
in the illustration. Radha was putting, I think, the
Yeah.
anklet on the forehead.
It's an artist's depiction, and so we don't take artist depiction as necessarily literal. It's an artist's depiction. And the artist is feeling this and he painted this. And another artist would feel that and paint that. So we're not going to get the details from an artist. Does that answer your question? Don't read too much into what the artwork says.
Okay, got it. I was curious, where does our tilak design?
Our tilak design is different. Theirs goes, you know what ours is. So theirs just goes down the nose and a little U shape down here, and that's it. That's their tilak marking. And then there are books that have depictions of different tilak markings for different sampradayas. So the main is vertical as opposed to horizontal. And then there's different vertical. I'm not a connoisseur of different Vaishnav tilak markings. I'm sorry, just not an encyclopedia yet. We have a question up front with this young student. Pass the microphone forward. There we go. You're on.
Hey Krishna Maharaj. So my question was, you mentioned that Jiva Goswami got a library of the books written by the Goswamis of Vrindavan. So are those original copies still there, or?
No, they were there. I heard you this time. That was pretty good. If your question is, are the original copies, the manuscripts, the original manuscripts still at Jiva Goswami's temple in Radha Damodar? No, those original manuscripts, whether the copies that are there, I don't know, but the original manuscripts were given to the Jiva Institute, it's called, and they made, what modern technology does. They could make preserved copies of the original manuscripts, showing the crumpled corners and everything. But it's the original, the handwriting of Rupa, and the handwriting of Jiva, and the handwriting of Sanatana Goswami. And it's the original manuscript, copy of the original manuscript, preserved by, I forget what the word they used to preserve the original manuscript, or a copy of the original manuscript. Does that answer your question? Okay. Others? Online?
What if someone is blaspheming your Guru Maharaj and his service? How can you not challenge them? This is in regards to Respect Seminar 2.
The picture what?
In regards to the Respect Seminar second one.
This is a different topic.
Different topic.
Okay. Wait till I come back again. We'll go take. I'd like to stay on topic. There's a principle I learned from giving classes to devotees in China. They don't ask on-topic questions, so I just have a flashcard that says, on topic, please. Because we want to stay focused on what we just spent an hour and a half discussing, so please keep on-topic questions. And, citing Prabhupada as one who said the same thing. Jai Sachinanda, you usually have something you want to add to this. You want to add something? Sure.
Well, it's more of a personal thing. The first time you came to the Northwest was in spring of 2001. And the first lecture you gave was on the traveling Sankirtan party of Sri Syamananda Pandit, Acharya, and Sri Das Thakur.
Hmm.
So quite an incident.
You have a good memory.
Yeah, it was wonderful. You presented it at the temple that was run by Prithu Prabhuji's disciples, and they loved it because
They like book distribution.
yeah, I mean it was a wonderful presentation. So I thought, what a coincidence that
Here we go again.
We're revisiting it
So many
here.
years later.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So-
You want to add something?
Are there different accounts of how the name Shyamananda Pandit from Dukhi Krishnadas came about?
Are there different accounts of?
How the name of Shyamananda Pandit?
Yes. One was from Radharani and the other was from Jiva Goswami. And they coincidentally happen to be the same name. But Dukhi Krishnadas became Syamananda from this source or that source. Same name. They're different accounts. So now, don't ask the question, which one came first or which one is right and which one's not right, and are they just different stories, or I don't have the answer to a question like that. Chronologically, it came first from Jiva, and then later Radharani, and then the later Radharani version is what the disciples told Hridaya Chaitanya from visiting Vrindavan and seeing Dukhi Krishna, now with a different name and a different tilak. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.